Excuse me. So we got Unit 3, Lecture 7 here. And this is the third lecture on perception. The last lecture on sensation and perception that come together. This one's on perceptual cues, influence on perception, interpretation of perception, why we don't all perceive things the same. We'll talk about perceptual sets and also the impact of context and how context has a lot to do with how we perceive things. So again, when it comes to perception, is this nature or is this nurture? Is the world the way it is, or are we taught to perceive it in a certain way? And again, as humans, we're going to perceive the world in a way that is convenient for us and what works for us, but we all don't have the same experience. So if I were to give you this little possibility that you had to start life all over again, all right? And you were going to live until at least the age of 80, and you were given an option. One of them is you would have the sight, you would have your vision for the first 20 years, then you would have 60 years of blindness. Or you were blind for the first 20 years, then you got 60 years of vision. Which one would you choose? For many people, the immediate response is, I would rather be blind for the first 20 years and have 60 years of vision, because it just comes out as math. I'd rather have 3/4 of my life with vision and only a quarter without. So a lot of people tend to think that of those two options, if given those choices, as tragic as those choices may be, that you would rather only have 20 years of blindness and 60 years of vision. But what studies have shown to be true is you would have a better life if you only had your sight for the first 20, then 60 years of blindness. As we'll talk about with development, the first 20 years of life are incredibly important. And this is where we're sort of making all these connections of what's normal, what's not normal, and all these particular things. And then if I've seen a sunset, I know what a dog is, I know what a human looks like, I know what the color blue is, all these things. And then for my 60 years of blindness, when people are referring to a dog or the color blue or a sunset, in my mind, I can perceive what's going on. But if I'm blind for the first 20 years, and then in my mind, I'm making up the world as I think that it is, and then suddenly, whoosh, you get your vision, that's not what I thought a dog was. That's not what I thought a human was. That's not what I thought a sunset was. And then it really becomes confusing because the world that you imagined is not now the world that you are perceiving. And your brain is just not ready to take in those sort of new things. For those of you guys who have me in class, we'll be watching a video specifically on this. For those of you that are taking this online, I'll try to find the clip of the video and connect it to this this day's PowerPoint. So people that are born blind and then later gain their sight have trouble matching those things up. It does not have the same impact if you're the opposite way, because again, infancy is critical. This is where you're getting your sense of normalcy and everything else. Now, when it comes to depriving the senses, Blakemore and Cooper did an experiment back in 1970, kind of a cruel experiment when you really think about it. But they took little kitty cats, and they took the little kitty cats and they raised them in isolation in these little sort of containers. Now, again, they would take the cats out and they'd play with them, whatever. But for the majority of the time, the little kitty cat is sitting here in this little sort of a thing here, and all he is exposed to are vertical lines, vertical lines, vertical lines, vertical lines. All he is raised with is vertical lines. So as a result, you take the little kitty cat out and you take a pen and you go, hey, kitty, 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 want to play with the pen? And the kitty would hit the pen because it would see the pen and it would hit the pen. But then when you take the pen and you go like that, kitty cat would not play with the pen because the kitty cat had no perception of horizontal. No perception of horizontal. Vertical, it could see all day. Horizontal, it could not, because since it's not raised with the concept of this, it doesn't have the feature detectors for it, as we see with this cat over here. You give it a vertical line and all these feature detectors are stimulated. Horizontal line, very little stimulation. Diagonal line, a little bit more because it's closer to a vertical line. Now, if you raise the kitty cat in a horizontal little container right here, the opposite would occur. This selective blindness does diminish as they get older, but they never completely 100% recover from this. So again, the way that we perceive the world to be early on is going to have a great impact on us later on. Now, again, our perception is pretty good at adapting, as we talked about with our sensory adaptation and getting on a boat and everything else. If you're playing baseball on a very windy day, you know to throw the ball. I want it to go straight, so I need to throw it a little bit over here so the wind will take it over. Our perceptual adaptation is pretty close to that. If you gave somebody perception goggles, that prism goggles that throw the world off 20%, eventually will adapt to that. There are also perception goggles that will make everything from the left to the right and the right to the left. And eventually we would adapt to it. If you take a look at me on the screen over here, I am on a non-mirrored way. So when I pick up my right hand, it actually shows up in the opposite side on the screen for me. But the reason I do this is because if I give you guys anything with writing, I want the writing to be able to come out normal. Now, most people, when they look at the reflection in a computer screen, a Zoom call, whatever, they tend to put it into a mirror perspective because that's what they're used to seeing. But again, if you take a look, you can read the way that that goes. But if I were to change it to a mirrored way, which is the way that most people see it, see if I can do this here real quick in the settings. Video settings. Okay, here, if I mirror my video, then it goes the opposite way. And this is what most of us are used to. And this is also, now I lift up my left hand and my left hand shows up there. All right, that's what a lot of us are used to. But again, it's not the way that the world really looks like, which is also why, and we'll talk about this a little bit down the road, we don't like pictures of ourselves because this is what I'm used to seeing in the mirror. My hair parted over here, but then it's really parted on the other side. So again, a lot of times we'll look at pictures of us and going, wow, that doesn't really look like me. It kind of does. It kind of does. That's kind of who you are. All right. So again, perceptually though, once I'm used to this because this is how I do Zoom calls because I want it to look normal. But a lot of people that aren't used to that perceptually, it's hard to adapt. Anyways, prison goggles put the world off 20%. It works for humans. Doesn't work for chickens in some way. Glasses that flip the world, where the bottom is up and the up is the bottom. It takes us a little bit to adapt to that. But then again, once the glasses are removed, then it takes a while to get back to it because we're used to going to the left or to the right or whatever else. Again, other senses, it's harder to make this adaptation. It's nearly impossible to adjust for changes to our sensation of hearing and adapt to them. If I take like a hearing cone and I point it over in that direction, so what's coming over here is actually coming into this ear, it's much harder for us to adapt to that and pick up sound and other things. All right. I got to get back here and there we go. All right, here's a great example of it. All right, what I want you to do, get myself kind of out of the way here. Bye-bye. See, now I'm over. Hello. So what I want you to do is stare at the star, focus at the star, focus only at the star. Now, as both of your eyes are converging onto this star, what's happening is your right eye, which is focused kind of over here, your right eye is not really working that hard. And the reason your right eye is not working that hard is because this is really in focus. So your perception is already in focus, but your perception over in your left eye right now, this is out of focus. So what your left eye is doing is it's making an adaptation to try to pull this thing into focus, making a lot of detail, whatever. Keep staring at the star, put all your focus on the star. So as your right eye is not working that hard and your left eye is working really, really hard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this picture, keep staring at the star. I'm going to switch this picture to a picture where both of them are equally in focus. And what's going to happen is for a brief second, as we looked at with vision a few lectures ago. For a brief second, this one will look the same, but this picture over here, keep staring at the star, this picture to your left is going to come into super sharp 4K, unbelievable focus until it goes back to normal. So you're going to get two of these pictures, but one of the pictures for a brief second, keep staring at the star, for a brief second, one of the pictures is going to look extra, extra sharp when I change it right here. And then it goes back to normal because your eye worked extra hard to get that picture in there. Okay. Now, when it comes to perception of time, time is very, very interesting because it's not something we see, it's not something we hear, it's not something we feel, but it is something we experience. And what time basically comes down to is when you don't have a lot of distractions, time seems to slow down. I'm bored. We're not there. You're in the car and it's just highway, highway, highway. When are we going to get there? Are we there yet? You know, the fewer distractions we have, the slower time seems to happen. This is why they did a study of bank lines, and they had people waiting in a bank, and people were complaining because there weren't enough tellers, whatever, and they felt like they were waiting a long time. So then what they did was they added a screen with the little news flashes, everything else and whatnot, and so they had something to look at. And when we have something to look at, time seems to go by a little bit quicker. And what the study noticed was when they put the little screens up there, a little something to distract people and whatnot, people thought that their wait was shorter. But in fact, it was longer because there were fewer tellers. So even though you were waiting longer, it seemed faster. Another really fascinating thing was done at Bush International Airport right here in Houston. A lot of people were complaining at Bush Airport that their wait at the baggage claim took forever. And the number one complaint about the airport was we just waited for our bags forever. And that was the big complaint. So what they did, strategically enough, is they moved baggage claim further away from the terminal. So by the time you got off the plane, by the time you walked all the way across the airport, by the time you got to baggage claim, your bags were already there. But it was the same amount of time. It was the same. It just took you 30 minutes to get off the plane and to walk in. So you weren't in there, hey, my bags are here. It's great. It's fantastic. Well, all they did was make you like walk further. But since you weren't there as long, it seemed like your bags were arriving earlier when in fact they were arriving at the same time. Time estimation does get faster as we age, but the perception of time doesn't. You take somebody in their 70s and you take someone who's 17 and you go about how long does it take for a minute to pass, and both of them will come up with sort of the same idea of how long a minute is. You ask a 27-year-old and a 37 or a 57-year-old, how fast did the last decade seem to go by? And the 57-year-old is going to say much faster as opposed to the 27-year-old because 57-year-olds experienced more decades. So as a result, the perception of time kind of gets a little bit in our estimation of time. Time seems to go fast for you at the age of 16, 17, 18. Last summer seemed to just poof right by. But when you were 6, summer seemed to last forever because you didn't have that many summers to compare it to. There's also something with time called the return trip effect. And the return trip effect basically is this idea that the trip home seems faster. Even though it's not, you're going the same number of miles. It could be the novelty of the trip. You're very excited about going there. Therefore, you know, all this anticipation and whatnot, and oh, I can't wait to get there, and there's no other distractions. But by the time you're coming home, it's like, I've already seen this road and whatnot. That could be true, but it doesn't impact things like a commute. You know, the commute to work, you know, getting to work and coming home from work, it's the exact same commute. It doesn't seem to be a perception of time difference there. Now, when it comes to a perceptual set, a perceptual set is the idea of I want to see things the way that I believe things. Again, people who are flat earthers are going to perceive only information that goes with their conspiracies. Many people felt in 1970 that this image right here, which was taken of the planet Mars, proved that there was in fact life on Mars. There's not. There's no life on Mars. But you go, oh, look at this. And they perceive, the perceptual set as I see a face. But this face is the size of a mountain. Look at the craters around it. There's no way, unless there's massive men on Mars. There's no way. And a lot of conspiracy theorists will say that we never landed on the moon, and they'll use this picture as evidence. And they take the perceptual set that they want to them. But this is a Hollywood soundstage. Why do you say that? Well, the flag is blowing. There's no wind in space. You think the people in NASA don't know that? Of course they know that. They put a stick in the flag. So you don't want to put a limp flag up there. You put a stick in it. That's why it's going like that. And they'll go, well, there's no stars. You're in space. There's no stars. Because it's daytime on the moon. You've got the sun coming right at you. You're not going to see stars when the sun is out. You don't see them here. Okay. But again, if I want to believe in something, I'm only going to perceive, even though we're all getting the same sensations of the sun coming up and going down on the planet. And most of us believe, well, that's because the planet is spinning. If you're a flat earther, you think the sun is moving. And it's just a weird thing. All right. So again, we're going to perceive things in a way that makes us comfortable. But a lot of times we get anchored in because once we see things a certain way, sometimes it's hard to unsee that. We take a look at this cartoon right here. Guy in glasses playing the saxophone, little bird doing a kamikaze mission right at him. And even when I take away the details that you see here, you still see the man playing the saxophone and the bird coming right at him. But what if I were to show you this picture and then look over here? Yeah, you can see it, but I still want to see the man in the saxophone. As a matter of fact, even here, I see the man in the saxophone. I still want to see that particular thing. Do you see birds, a tree, or a face? Well, again, if I want to see a face, I'm going to see a face. It's a kind of a figure ground thing going on here. I'll see one or I'll see the other. Again, the same thing we talked about with perceptual sets. Once you learn this is a cow, that's what it is. If I show you this picture right here and I go, this is Scotland, 1972, what do you see? A lot of people would go, it's a Loch Ness Monster, because they think Scotland, they think back in the 70s, they see this thing going through and they're like, I see Bessie. Yeah, really? That's just, it's a lake with a stick in a lake. That's all it is. It's a stick in a lake. But since I put Scotland, since I put 1972, since it's black and white and grainy, you want to see the Loch Ness Monster, you're going to see the Loch Ness Monster. You want to see UFOs, man, you're going to see UFOs, even those are just clouds up there. I'm going to see what I want to see. So again, a lot of times what we want to see, our perceptual set, our own biases affect the sensation coming in. Again, top-down processing. Context has a huge effect on perception. What you're expecting to experience is going to impact the experience. If you're in a good mood, you're going to look for the good. You're in a bad mood, you're going to look for the bad. If you're going to a party and you think the party is going to be a great time, odds are the party is going to be a great time. If you're going to a party and you think the party is going to suck, odds are it's going to suck, because what you want to do is you want to find things that are basically going to justify your opinion going in, because we don't want to be proven wrong. So a lot of times our attitude about things going in, what we're expecting to see, I'm expecting the food to be terrible, I'm expecting the food to be amazing. That's going to have a great deal to do with how we actually take that stuff in. And sometimes it leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it sometimes changes as we get older. There was a great study that was done on speed dating. If you don't know what speed dating is, it's actually really kind of sad. What speed dating is you take a bunch of people, you take over at Chili's or whatever, and you have a bunch of women at tables, and then you have a bunch of guys at tables, and then you talk to one another for 5 minutes, and then you go, next one, and then you rate and you score the person. And if that person scored you and you scored that person and you made a match, you get one another's phone numbers, whatever. All right, that's what speed dating is. It's really kind of strange. But with that in mind, here's what they did at one speed dating session. They told this group of guys before they were going to go meet girls. They took two groups of guys, average looks, both sides, average jobs, both sides, whatever. They randomly selected the groups. They told one group of guys, group A, they were told, listen, we showed these girls pictures of you and they found you attractive. Not only that, we told them what you did for a living. And they were like, oh my God, that's what I've been looking for. So they find you physically attractive and they like what you do for a living. Go in and meet them. And we're going to give this, so, you know, you don't have to worry about that for the 5 minutes. They already know that. So just go in and talk to them. Group B were told, hey, listen, we showed these girls pictures of you and really weren't impressed. A lot of pointing, a lot of laughing, a lot of giggling. Didn't go well. So we told them what you did for a living. And again, did not go over well. A lot of laughing, a lot of pointing, a lot of giggling. So they don't think you're attractive. They don't like what you do for a living, but hey, go meet them anyways. See how it works. Now, here's the trick. The women were told nothing about these guys. They were told nothing. They saw no pictures. But guess which group of guys the women found more attractive? It was Group A. Group A came off as more attractive because Group A thought they were attractive. So Group A act with confidence. They looked them in the eyes. They made a lot of eye contact. They were confident in themselves, everything else. Group B, who thought the women found them unattractive, a lot of this, a lot of this, a lot of that. It's just, what am I getting out of here? And they were found as less attractive. So again, that's self-fulfilling prophecy. You can't be attractive to anybody else unless you find yourself attractive. You got to kind of please yourself first. If I don't think I'm a good looking person, nobody else is going to think that I'm good looking. If I don't think I'm worth dating, nobody's going to think I'm worth dating. I got it. It's a Maslow's hierarchy. I got to please me before I can please anybody else. And again, a lot of times we look for things the way they're supposed to be. Upside down picture here of Angelina Jolie. But the smile is right side up. The eyes are right side up. So when we flip this upside down, looks kind of creepy. Both these pictures of Barack Obama look the same, but you flip them upside down and they are not the same. But again, when we flip them back over, they kind of look, I want to make the smile normally. That's what the smile should be, but we kind of want to make it in a way that makes sense to us. When I take a look at this, when I think of Pepe Le Pew, and man, I love Pepe Le Pew. I do love Pepe Le Pew. You don't think I love Pepe Le Pew? See if I can get an entire shrine over here. Can you see it? It's against the wall, kind of, sort of. See a little bit of it, but I've got a shrine over there of Pepe Le Pew stuff, right? Right on my wall. There's a bunch of there's a Pepe Le Pew stained glass window there my father made for me. Got a bunch of Pepe Le Pew things. I love Pepe Le Pew. Pepe Le Pew, I know he's going through cancel culture and everything else. He's a cartoon. Get over it. But I love it. And my wife and I, we were actually going to go to Paris this past summer, but with COVID, we ended up not going. So we may go again. We may go in the spring. And the idea of Paris in the springtime and love, and I'm just excited about it. So Paris in the springtime, love the idea. Love it. It's a popular thing. A lot of people like to go to Paris in the springtime. So if I sit here and I go, well, I love Paris in the springtime, it seems like a wonderful place to be. I love Paris in the springtime. But if we really look at that triangle, there's a trick. There's two thes. I love Paris in the springtime. There's two thes. Well, a lot of times we only see the one. There shouldn't be two. So we don't see two, even though there's clearly two right there. All right. Last thing we need to talk about here, the idea of parapsychology. Parapsychology is the study of paranormal phenomena. It's the idea of mind reading and everything else, psychokinesis, all these other things. So far, there is very little scientific evidence to prove that there's any type of ESP or anything else like that. Pretty much everything that we do is sort of coincidence. When you're sitting there and you're going, you say to your friend, you're going, oh, I'm so hungry. They're going, oh my God, I was just thinking that I'm hungry too. That's so weird. We connect on such a weird level. It's lunchtime. That's why you're both so hungry. Okay. One person or the other person's stomach grumble. You're not connecting on a psychic level. It's just coincidences are what's happening more than anything else. And again, we want to believe it. We want to believe that we have control. We want to believe that if I go to a psychic, if I go to someone who can connect to the other side, I can talk to my dog Skippy, who passed away, and oh, Skippy's okay, still chasing a ball into heaven. Skippy couldn't talk to me when he was alive. So suddenly that doesn't make a lot of sense, but we want to believe it. We want to believe that we have these connections. And people are like, I was on a Ouija board and I felt it. You wanted to feel it. So you're going that way. And again, the people who want to believe in this, it's going to happen more. And if you think it's all a bunch of crap, it never works. All right. So again, this idea of ESP, there's different sort of things that come in here. Telepathy is the idea of reading minds. And again, reading minds doesn't work. It really doesn't work. What we're doing is a lot of times we're planning things in other people's minds. Clairvoyance, perceiving events that are happening far from you. Events happen day to day. Oh man, I had this dream that there was a car crash. And car crashes happen every day. perceiving events that will happen, even though they're not happening. Oh, I just had this weird feeling about you. Oh, I thought this was going to happen. You know, when people make these predictions, and it cracks me up, because right now I'm reading all these articles on ESPN and whatever. Here's who's going to win in the Southeast Conference. Here's who's going to win the Big 12. Here's our predictions for things that are going to happen. Here are the big games. Give me your articles from a year ago. Let's see how much you came out. When I see these NFL mock drafts or whatever, they're never right. They're never right. But people still want to believe it. They want to believe that they have some insight into the future and everything else. And a lot of this is based on what's called the Barnum effect, named after P.T. Barnum. So there was a sucker born every minute. Con artists basically use the vulnerability of people wanting to believe in a psychic expectation. You know, I want to believe that my whoever that my Grammy is okay on the other side. You know, so what they'll do is they'll use very vague sort of concepts. You know, you're a strong person, but you can also be vulnerable. Who couldn't? I can feel a message from the other side of your loss. Well, I wouldn't come to you unless I was worried about someone on the other side. I have a feeling there's problems in your life. Who doesn't have problems in their life? You know, and then what you do is you give them a few hints and then they get a little bit easier. And it's just easy. It's really simple to do. The person who proved this to sort of be all BS was a gentleman by the name of Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was an escape artist from the early 20th century. He knew he was going to die at an early age because he kept putting himself in straitjackets and in milk, you know, containers and whatnot. So he said to his wife, he goes, listen, I'm going to die an early death. And he believed in this. And he goes, listen, if you're really, truly talking to me, I'm going to give you a word. I'm going to give you a word. And if this person says, I am talking to Harry and Harry is saying this word, you know you're talking to me. So this Harry dies. He actually got punched in the stomach, solar plexus, weird sort of situation. And then his widow goes from place to place, all over the place, and could never find anyone who knew the secret word. Was the secret word? Don't know. She took it to her death. But this just sort of proves that there really isn't. Now, again, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I could be wrong. Spiritually, I don't want to get in the way of anything, but I'm saying from a scientific perspective, nothing to this. Nothing to this. Could be wrong. All right. And that gets us all the way through perception. Next lecture, we are going to take a look at stress. And stress is very important that we deal with perception because stress is all about perception. Everything about stress is about perception. That's why we covered this first. We'll pick up with that next.